When Kenny and I were in our 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s, why we bowled quite a lot. Uh, we first got started probably in '61, and I'd never bowled hardly ever in my life, maybe a few times in Midland. But when we first started to bowl, why Viola and Emil were our partners, and it was a Sunday night social. And Kenny was a pretty good bowler. I wasn't a good bowler to start with. I never was. But there was a surprise that time. For some reason, one night, I don't know, miracles or miracles, I had a pretty high score. And that was all that really went on with that league. And then Emil and Viola, they decided they didn't want to bowl anymore. So Kenny and I went over to Eugene, and his superintendent at, at work, he sponsored the PMT League for the Men, and his wife, she sponsored Mrs. PMT, and that was a afternoon one. And then, for several years, his superintendent, Chet Thelma Simmons, were our partners, and we bowled on just a social league, and then Kenny bowled another one. So he was bowling 3 leagues, and I was bowling 2. And in the afternoon, well, we'd bowl, and then they'd give us lessons. Well, the lessons didn't help me much. Kenny'd always say I had a backup ball, whatever a backup ball is, I don't know. But anyhow, one night we were bowling, and I threw the first ball and got a really, really bad split. I don't even remember what the pins were that were left. I don't know if I knew then. Anyhow, I got up, and I think there were 3 pins standing. And I told Kenny, I said, if I pick that up, would you buy me a new dress? And Chet, he said, I'll buy you a new dress if you pick that up. And another, miracles of miracles, I did. I don't know how it ever happened, but I did. And he bought me a new dress, or probably Thelma, but anyway, it was a sundress. And while we were doing this, we went to district, I think, once our team did. Of course, we didn't do anything, but Kenny's teams, they went 2 or 3 times to district, and they were always fun. They'd bowl a while, and then we'd either go to a lodge or something and finish out the evening dancing, or go to dinner or something. So anyhow, bowling, we bowled on, I imagine we probably quit bowling when PMT kind of folded and the legs kind of drifted off, and then we'd bowl once in a while just for fun. I never did bowl a 200 except once, and that wasn't in the league, so it didn't count anything. But Kenny, he got a lot of 200 pins, and he got several trophies. And talking about trophies, I only got 1 trophy in my life, and each one of the kids had got a trophy or an award for something, except Linda. And of course, Linda couldn't do any sports or anything, but she said, I'm going to get a trophy. Someday I'm going to get a trophy. Well, we all, thought it was pretty near impossible with her handicap. But she joined a weight lifting thing in Portland. I don't know just what it was, but they had a tournament. And Linda probably didn't weigh over 90 pounds at the time, but she lifted weights. And when they had this tournament, there was nobody else in her class. And so she lifted her weights, and she got her trophy. So anyway, she said, I told you I was going to get one. Well, all the kids said, leave it to Linda. If she says she's going to do it, she's going to do it. And she did. And the same thing, they've all had a name that goes on their desks. All of them had a name tag but Linda. And I don't know what she done with where she was working. I guess at the crippled children's place up there. And they had her do the telephone thing. And they made her a trophy that had her name on it to put on the front of her desk. So if Linda wanted something done, she really usually got it done. Another thing after bowling, there was the Sages and the Strattons, and as we got together and we played a lot of rummy cub, or tile rummy we called it, and a lot of just card games. We'd get together at least once every 2 weeks, and we'd meet at the different places. So this kind of took the place of bowling when it quit. And then we went out a lot with the Moose Lodge whenever they had a state convention or anything. Why, we'd go to it, and they were usually at Seven Feathers or some pretty big place. And we'd usually go on Friday, and they'd have meetings in the afternoon, and they'd have a meeting at night. And I liked meetings. I was the only one that really liked meetings, and I went to all of them. And I know that Kenny and them kind of skipped some of the meetings that they should have been to. And it wasn't a convention that we went to, but there was something that the Moose had over on the coast. And after whatever it was over, where we all went to the lodge and danced. Well, I think I mentioned Ray Cole before, that belonged to the camper club, and he was kind of a loner. He wasn't married, didn't have a girlfriend or anything, and he sat in his I think he had a trailer house. I'm not sure. He might have had a trailer. I don't know. But anyway, he'd do leather goods. But he'd always go to the dances and so on. So one night we were, like I say, we were over there at Coos Bay, and he was sitting there by himself. And I told, I think there was 4 of us. There was Patty Weber and Adele and Viola and I. And I said, if I ask Ray to dance, will you guys cut in? I said, give us a dance around once, and then one of you cut in, because we didn't even know if he'd dance. And so, yeah, they agreed we'd do it. So when the music started, I went over and asked him, I said, will you dance? And he kind of smiled, and he said, yeah. Well, come to find out, he was really a good dancer. And we started around, and the funny part of it was we didn't tell the husbands or anything, and I guess some of them went over to ask the other women to dance, and they said, no, we got this dance. And they kind of looked at him, and they were just standing there. Well, we don't see you dancing. And they said, well, we've got this dance. And so Ray and I danced around the circle one time, and one of them cut in on him. And he just, I just said, I'll be back. And he didn't pay much attention, being tagged in the first time. Well, the next time he went around, he got tagged by another one. And I know by then he was beginning to wonder what's going on. And then the third one, and then the fourth one, and then we started all over again. Well, by the time it was over, I think Ray was having a pretty good time, and I know we were. And so the next morning, so for some reason, us women got in there earlier than the guys did, and Ray was sitting in there, and Don Brunton came in, and he said, Ray, he said, you better be on the watch. He said, there's 4 husbands looking for you, and they're all bigger than me. And of course, Ray, he was really enjoying all this. And after that, whenever we went to a dance, he danced. And he didn't only dance with us, he danced with anybody else too. And if they did, they'd go ask him to dance. So that was one good thing that came from this. Then I guess we met this couple, Adele and Gil. I've mentioned them several times, and they came up here from California, and they didn't. I don't know why they came up here, because they didn't have anybody here. But we met them through the lodge, and Gil had been in the Navy, and he had been a truck driver. So him and Kenny had quite a lot in common, and so and they went to the dances, and we found out, or Kenny found out, that on Thanksgiving or any holiday, they either went to a restaurant or sometimes just a quick service place or something. So yeah, he asked him, he said, would you like to come over for Thanksgiving dinner? And of course, Gil accepted right away, but he said, I want to warn you. He said, I got five married kids. They'll be there. And I don't think we had a lease at the time, but there'll be 6 grandkids. So he says it could get pretty noisy. Well, they came over, and then the next time Kenny saw him, he said, well, was it too noisy for you? And Gil said, no. He said, your grandkids were fine. You were great, but your kids, he said, they got noisy. And I asked him, I said, and who was right in the middle of them? Well, then when Christmas came, Kenny asked him again, and they showed up for Christmas. And then he told Kenny, he said, I don't understand your grandkids. He said, not once did any of them bring anything in the front room to eat. And he said, if they were told anything, they done it right away. And Kenny said, well, of course. He said, they know that nobody eats in the front room. Well, I don't know who it was here. This was later, was here one time. And they were eating and had a plate. They took it in the front room. And I think it was Ryan, came out and he said, Donnie, he said, so-and-so sitting in there on the couch getting ready to eat. He said, I said, well, you go tell him we don't eat in there. So Ryan went in and told him, and whoever it was got up and moved outdoors after that. I don't think anybody, when the kids were growing up and so on, ever ate in that front room. Kitty and Gil got to be really, really good friends. Well, I was going to say again, Gil came back for Christmas the next year. Oh, and when he came for Christmas that time, why, he wanted to carve the turkey. He says, where's your electric knife? And I said, oh, I don't have an electric knife. I said, Kitty always cuts it, or somebody does. So he said, I'll carve the turkey, which he did. Well, a year later, I got an electric knife for Christmas. But Kenny and Gil, then in later life, they got to go fishing about 25 miles up to Mackenzie. And Gil said he didn't like fish, but he liked to catch them. And so they went up there, and Gil would usually have Kenny drive. And Kenny told him, he said, well, you try this fish once and see if you don't like it. Well, they went up and they caught fish, and then the next week when they come down, why, they froze the fish they caught the week before. And so Gil had called me on the telephone, on his phone, and say, we're coming home. And so I'd fix the fish. And the first time that he was down there, why, Kenny said, well, just try one. I said, yeah, and if you don't like it, I'll fix you a hot dog. Well, there was only one time, and he decided he liked trout fish. And so, this was on for several years. Gil had, or Adele had glaucoma, and she was blind or almost blind, so she'd stay with me, and they'd fish, and they did this until Gil got so he couldn't go fishing anymore, and even when Kenny was sick and couldn't hardly get out of bed himself, I went in there one morning, and he was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going fishing. He went his clothes. Gil had already passed away. And I said, well, who are you going with? Well, I'm going with Gil Soaries. And Kitty did get mixed up at times, not often, but at times. And I said, oh, boy. And he said, you get my clothes, and if you can't get them, I can. And I said, well, Gil called, and he's going to be late. So why don't you go lay down again, and when he gets here, why, you'll be ready. He said, okay. So he did. He got and lay down again. And later he told me, he said, he said, I had a dream. I dreamed I was going fishing with Gil Soaries. And I said, yeah, I know, he did. So anyway, he and Gil fished for quite a long time. Oh, and I forgot to tell you about Ray Cole. After that dance up there, why, Patty, and it was her idea. She said, let's just make Ray our sweetheart. Let's just have some surprises for him. So when they had the Christmas party, the camper club, well, each one would take a gift, and then you'd get a gift by a number. Well, when they got through, why, whoever was doing it, I don't remember who, said, well, here's one that's addressed to Ray. And Ray said, well, I already got mine. He said, well, this says your name on it. And us, there was 6 of us at the time, had got together, and we'd got him a 5-pound box of chocolates, and then just signed it from your sweethearts. Well, of course, he was just shocked as he could be. And of course, I know, knew who it was from. Well, then when Valentine's Day came, why, Kenny had made a sign, and I don't even remember what it was that sign. It was something that Kenny made and fixed, and then he signed it on there, your sweethearts. So Ray put that in the window of his in the window of his RV, which whatever it was. And so then when Christmas came again, why, I don't remember. I think we probably got him chocolates again. Well, then when when Valentine's Day came that time, why, I asked the others, I said, if Kenny makes a heart-shaped, if Kenny will make a heart-shaped clock for him and puts our names on it, will you pay for the materials? Oh, yeah, they were more than ready to. So I don't know. I don't imagine they probably cost each one of us about $5. I think Kenny only charged us $25 or $30. And this really surprised Ray that he got that. And it did have our names spaced around on each side of us, all five of us. And but he surprised us too, because I don't know whether he bought them or whether he made them, but each one of us got a big red rose, and I pinned mine on the refrigerator in the motorhome, and I guess each one of them went in the motorhome. So anyway, After that, Ray got a girlfriend. So we thought, well, we better stop. So that was the last thing that he got. But anyway, well, we never did meet the girlfriend, but we knew that he took her, but he didn't bring her to the campouts, and he did take her to the dances, but we never ever really got acquainted with her. Okay, when I was teaching at St. Alice, uh, we made my first trip to Canada. The Pope was in Vancouver. And so I don't know whether it was a school bus or whether they rented a regular bus. But anyhow, I took the school kids up. And a few of the other kids that are about that age, anyhow, most of them were kids that were on the bus. And there were four of us with as chaperones. Now, I can't remember ever staying all night up there anywhere, but I know that we left super early in the morning and we drove up there. And when we went to go across, of course, they come in to see if we were all American citizens or had passports. And there was one girl, I think she was seventh grader, and if anybody could cause trouble, it was her. And he came in and he said, "You're all American citizens, I guess." And she said, "Well, I was born in Germany." Well, right now he comes up into the back and he said, "Well, do you have a passport?" Well, then she began to kind of worry. She said, "No, I don't have a passport." And I know that she was thinking, hey, maybe I talked once when I should. And I said, she's an American citizen. I said, she was born in Germany, but her dad was in the service. So I said, she's been an American citizen all her life. And he said, oh, okay, that's okay. Well, one of the other chaperones really gave her a scold, and she said, "You just be quiet after this." He says, "You know, they'd have put you off and you'd have had to sit here till your folks come and got you." So she was pretty quiet the rest of the way. Well, when we got over to Vancouver, you can't imagine the people that were there. There were thousands. It looked like thousands and thousands of kids. And I don't know just how we got to this big stage where the Pope was, but we were lucky enough that we were back quite a ways, and we could see him and so on, but we knew that we wouldn't get close enough really to get a good look at him. Well, he made a path for him, and he was on a huge stage, and he got in this Pope mobile and he drove it around through the crowds, and that path happened to be within just real close to where our group was. And he was coming, and he went there. There was one boy, I imagine he was probably 8 or 10. He was kind of an ornery little guy, and he came up and he said, "Mrs. A," he said, "I could throw a rock and hit that Pope mobile." I said, "Well, just don't do it." He said, "Oh, I wouldn't, but I could." I said, "Well, you won't." And but they did. They all got to see the Pope and so on. And the stage was huge. And I don't really know how it was done, because when he did mass and gave a very short sermon, it was in English, but on one side of it, it was being an interpreter was saying the same thing in Spanish, and I don't know what the third one was, but anyway, it was done in three languages, and I'm sure the kids will never forget it. And coming home, I think we came home that day, because I can't remember staying up there with a whole busload full of kids. And it was very quiet coming home. The kids slept most of the way. And the other time I got to Canada, Larry and Joy went. This time we went in our motorhome, and we went up, and there's some where they make beer somewhere. We went through that. I don't know what the Washington beer is, and we went through Mount St. Helens before we circled around and went across to Vancouver. And this was before we went across by our neighbors, the Cornwells. Jim had retired from the Marines, and he was kind of working. I think it was more or less for the Coast Guard, or anyway, it was some uh, government thing. And anyway, we visited the evening with them, and then we went and I don't know what kind of a it was more in a boat because we drove the motorhome in the bottom, and then we went up some stairs, and that's where the passengers were all. And Joy got a little bit seasick. Larry and Joy with us. Joy got a little bit sick going over because it was kind of rough, but after we got over to Vancouver, why, everything was fine. And we went through the Bouchard Gardens, and they were beautiful. I mean, I imagine we were there probably 2 hours, maybe a little longer. I know Larry was born and ready to leave, and Joy and I were doing. They had rose gardens. They had all kinds of different gardens that we'd go through. But anyhow, it was getting. It wasn't dark, but it was getting kind of twilight towards evening, and right before the exit way, they had some kind of a water show, and wanted to show this kind of like. Oh, I don't know just how they did it, but it flashed out on different flowers, and so Larry did like that. Well, when we got out of there, why we went down to downtown and found a place to stay all night. And the next morning, when we got up, we went down and we went on a buggy ride. There was a horse-drawn buggy, and Kenny and I were in the front seat, and Larry and Joey in the back. And we had a tour of Vancouver. And when we got back, Joey wanted to buy a sweatshirt. And I don't know whether Larry didn't like it or he thought it taught too much or not, but he said, no. He said, you're just wait, you'll find another one you like better. Well, anyhow, we got started out of Vancouver, and we went clear across to Spokane. And every little place we went through, why, we looked for a sweatshirt, and none of them ever suited either one or the other of them. And when we got to Vancouver, why, we went out to some dam, and it also had some kind of water shows, and it was the water must have been behind it because it showed old cars, and then they had some dancers and so on. And sometimes it looked like the water was coming right over them. Sometimes it was in back, and sometimes it was just like a curtain. So even though my relation in Deer Park, north of Spokane, was probably only 25 miles away, why, we didn't go see him. So, but we turned around and came back on a different way than we'd went across. And I don't think we didn't stop at very many places. We did see any things that I kind of wanted to go up to Lake Louise. It was only 12 miles out of the way, but we didn't. And when we got back to Seattle, why, Sage had been transferred to Kent, Washington, so we drove to their place and spent that evening and night. And then the next day, Lewis had to go to work, but Anne took us down to the docks and so on, and Kenny and I wanted to go through the Space Needle. And so we went back to wherever the Space Needle was at. Anne might have been driving, I don't know. because we went in a car, and Larry and Joy, and Ann had already been up in the Space Needle, so she didn't care to go, and Larry and Joy, they didn't go, but Kenny and I went up, and it was really neat, and they had a rotating bar up there, a food bar, and so the whole time we were up there, while we were seated, while we went around and around, and I think we had either Cokes or coffee or something. Anyway, we didn't do any hurrying, and so then we went back down, and I don't think I think we took a little boat ride around the dock in there, and then we came on home. Well, we hadn't been home too long, and I don't know whether it was the same year or whether it was later that Laurie's folks in St. George, Utah, were having a family reunion, and they wanted to go down. So, okay, we'll go with you. And Bob and Tracy went with us at that time. And we started down, and when we got south, it got hot. It got super hot area, and the refrigerator quit working. And so they thought the refrigerator had gone out. So one little town we stopped at, and Larry drove it in, and they said, there's nothing the matter with your refrigerator. It's just this hot weather. And when things cool off, your refrigerator's going to be okay. Well, we went on down, and we had to, before we got down there, and I don't know what part of Utah it is, but there's what they call Zion, Zion Park, and you drove right through it. And on one side, it was kind of like the Garden of the Gods. There was all kinds of rock figurines, and they were all natural and so on. And it was kind of like, anyway, you could fly over this whole area. They gave airplane rides for, I think, $10 a person. And, of course, Bob and I wanted to go right away. And Kenny said, yeah. He said, that'd be a neat thing to fly over. And they did have, they were mountains, and of course there were trails and so on you could walk too. And well, Larry didn't think we had time. We had to go on to get down there for this reunion. And some of these places, going through this park thing, they were kind of like tunnels. And his dad had worked on those, and they had walkways clear through these tunnels, and people could walk all around, and they had benches that you could sit and rest and then walk on through. Well, we never stopped. We went straight on through. Well, when we got on down there, I think there was a family of, I think there were 12 kids, and their kids, and of course there was a lot of people. Well, we never got to St. George, but there was I guess just kind of a little community more that maybe, I don't, maybe they counted it a town, I don't know, but there's only 1 or 2 stores there, and a high school, and then this huge park, and that's where the reunion was. Well, they were well prepared for it and had it ready. They had all different kinds of booths set up that you and auctions and so on, and they had a jail, and the guys played a lot of horseshoes, and they had stuff for the kids. Well, Joey and I were just sitting there kind of watching them going on, and 2 self-appointed sheriffs come over and said, well, you 2 are just sitting here not doing anything. He said, you might as well be sitting in jail. So they arrested us. and we were in jail. I don't know how long Kitty and Larry left us in there, but we were there at least a half hour. And I don't know whether this building, they rented it or what, but it had bars on the windows, and on the inside, it, there was just nothing, just walls. And finally, I think Bob and Tracy's the one that finally um, bailed Joy and I out. And I don't know what the kids did, but they had a lot of games for the kids. What bad they knock over, and they had tennis, and the guys did a lot of golfing, and once again a big barbecue of anything you wanted. Well, it rained there. It seemed like we always got in some kind of a storm, and it was after dinner, and they got pretty near everything covered except the ketchup bottles. And do you know it rained so that it filled a half empty ketchup bottle. There were several of them. It filled them clear up full of water. Well, and then it stopped. It stopped just as quick as it did. It was a fast, hard rain. And then that night, why, it wasn't in the park, but it was some kind of a campground. Why, there was probably at least 6 of Larry's relation was out to the campground, and that was the ones that he wanted to camp with. So we were around a campfire. I think they had wieners and hot dogs and so on out there. So anyway, we spent the evening out there, and then we went back to the park the next day, and I think it was probably middle afternoon. Why, we started home, and his brother, his name was Bob, his brother from Henderson, he was down there. So we started home. Maybe it was the next day, because on the way again there was another rainstorm, and Kenny was driving, and it was a lightning and thunderstorm, and Bob was on his motorcycle, and Kenny said, I'm going to stay far enough back, because he said that road's slick, and he said that motorcycle could go over at any time. Well, I don't suppose the rain lasted, or we ran out of it anyway. We went on up, and I think it was Boulder Dam, I'm not sure. Anyway, we went through this dam. A lot of people walked over the top, but we didn't, and there was a big long slide cement thing that we walked down, and then we walked underneath it to the other side. And when we went through, why, there was just us, and there was a tour guide, and it was really cold in there after being out where it was so hot. It was cold, and anyway, my dad had always, when he talked about that Boulder Dam, why, he'd said that there was a couple. He thought a couple, one for sure. Workers had fell over when they were running this tons and tons of cement, and he said they couldn't get them out. They just buried them and so on. So I asked this guy, I said, my dad always said that they heard this, and he said, I don't know how that story ever got started, but he said it sure went across the country. He said, no, nobody or no thing fell in the cement while it was being run. He said, if anything, the thing had failed, he said, it had had to be fished out, because it could have caused air bubbles or something in the cement. So he said, that's a story that sure spread, but it wasn't true. And he said that I don't know. I guess some of the, I don't know how old that was, but I guess some of the equipment and some of it was brought in there by horse and wagon and so on. So it must have been older than, I mean, before trucks and so on were there. And we went through that, and then we went across. It was just like desert and all kinds of cactus and First thing Kenny said, no, we're not stopping and getting any cactus. And it was kind of like Arizona. If you got caught digging up one of their cactus, you'd be fined good and heavy. Well, no cactuses. But I did get one when we got to Las Vegas, so I did have one from there. Well, anyway, we got to Bob's place, and it was, I think we spent one day and one night there, and it was Joyce's my birthday. My birthday was one day, and Joyce was the next, and he said, for your birthday, he said, we'll go into Las Vegas, and I'll take you to a Broadway show. He said they had this special going on. There was 3 one-act shows, and he said he didn't think the kids would like it. Now, I can't remember whether we took 2 cars in or whether he had 2 kids, Bob did, and they were quite a little older than ours, so their daughter might have been driving. Anyhow, Bob and Tracy and their 2 kids went to Caesar's Palace to a movie. And this movie they went to was one of those 3D ones. And Bob said their seats, he said, you didn't sit up, you laid down. And he said, the show they went to, I don't know what it was, but planes took off in it. And he said that was really scary for the first ones. He said those planes took off. It was with these 3D glasses. It just looked like they were just going right at you, right over the top. Well, Joy and I and went for our birthday to the 3 shows. They were one act. I don't know how long they were. We were in there a good 2 hours, maybe over. Joy and I, they were okay, but we both thought that we'd saw high school kids here that it was just as good or better, especially when Springfield High School put on, what was the name of that show? I'll think of it after a bit. We saw this show. But anyhow, going home, we went back through the park, but we never stopped at any time till we got back there. And that was our trip to Utah. I never did like Utah very well anyway. When we'd go through Utah going back to Kansas, why we had to go through the Salt Lake. And we went through there one time, and the wind was blowing and had that all riled up, and it was really, really rancid. And we did go wading one time in the Salt Lake, and it was kind of an outlet of it. But Utah is not one of my favorite states to go through. Okay, on Mother Shudder's birthday, pretty near all the Daises went back. They had rented the American Legion, I believe it was, or one of the buildings back there, and they were there most of the afternoon and the evening, and there was pinochle games and so on, and Mother was in assisted care at this time, and I saw several of my friends, but a lot of them had left us by this time. A year later, we went back again, and I don't think it was the hospital, but I think it was a nursing home she was in, and she was a roommate with my aunt, and Mother at this time was 101, and my aunt, I think, was about 99. I think Eula was about 2 years, 3 at the most, years younger than Mother. And when we went back this time, she was, they were in bed most of the time. Some of the times they could get up. and I spent most of my time there with her. I did go play bingo with my girlfriend and so on, and but things you could tell that mother was just as sharp as she ever was. She could remember everything, and she and Eula were roommates, which was a good thing. And she had me straighten up her clothes closet, and she had what I don't know. I some kind of diabetes. They say when you get older, sometimes you get this diabetes, and that it affected her eyesight, so she couldn't see very good. Like I'm what that is, but anyway, I was putting those clothes where she told me to, and I just laid one of them down on the bottom part of the closet, and she said, "Lay that flat." And I said, "I thought you couldn't see." She says, "I can see flat, and that piece goes flat." So we put it flat. Well, uh, like I say, I spent most of my afternoons and so on with her. But one afternoon, a bunch of us were getting together, and I didn't go up there until towards evening. And I didn't tell her I wasn't coming. And when I went up there, she said, "I thought you'd gone home." And I said, "Oh, I wouldn't go home without telling you goodbye." And she said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "Oh, Beverly and I and a bunch of us, I don't know what we done. We done something." She said, "Oh, you just got too many friends." I wish that was now. But anyhow, we stayed a little longer than usual that time, and then we came home, and about close to the week before Christmas, I can't just remember how many days before, but anyhow, Ron called one night, and he said, "Well," he said, "I'm making that call that we never ever wanted made," but he said uh, that Mother had passed away. I guess he and Betty were there, and had just got home, and she passed away. And I said, "Well, we'll be there tomorrow." And so Kenny and I and Bill and Joyce flew back, and flowing back, Joyce, there was no problem. Joyce got her ticket, and it said Joyce May, which it should. And so when we got into Denver, the luggage hadn't got there, and they said, "Well, we'll deliver it tomorrow." And I said, "You're going to bring it clear to Goodland, Kansas?" "Oh, no, they didn't do that." So anyhow, they gave us some tickets, but they weren't for full dinners, and I guess we could have sandwiches or so on. And somehow uh, Joyce got 4 tickets, and I got 4 tickets. And so Joyce got pizza, and she told them to wrap it in foil and put it in containers, and we ate that on the way home. And we'd already arranged for a rental car that was, and I was surprised. It was brought to the airport for us, where we usually had to go out to a car rental place and get it. But anyhow, they were brought there, and it was night when we left, and they came, and we drove down to Goodland that night. And I think the 4 of us must have stayed with Esther, because Betty had a house full, because Joanne and Don, they flew in, and they probably stayed there. And I imagine Ron's, I can't remember who, but I do know that I'm pretty sure that that's where we stayed. And so the arrangements were made, and I know everything had to move fast. Larry Bill was there, And I know that Bill talked with the priest a lot because Bill read the readings, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he read the obituary or whatever they call that before anybody about Mother. He read that, and then the day after the funeral, Larry Bill flew home, and I know that we didn't read. We must have read Mother's will together or something, but I know no arrangements were made, and so we decided that we'd all go back next summer because Shirley and Joy had to be there, and Shara, and so we left. Finished up the arrangements with Joanne. Joanne was there the night before, and I was there, and I think they flew out to Wisconsin the next day, and that was the day before Christmas, and we flew out Christmas Day, and when we got home here, why they'd fixed Christmas dinner, and they were here. Well, I forgot when we got to Denver, we had trouble getting through the place, the examination place. Now Kenny had steel in his knees, so he had to go through a separate line. Bill, he went through right away, and for some reason, something was the matter with Joyce's tickets. They thought her name should be Anderson when they just had May. They thought May was her middle name, and I don't know what she had to go through. And then I started through, and I had a bracelet on that Bob had brought back from Singapore. Still got that bracelet. And anyhow, the buzzers rang, and as soon as it did, I knew what it was. So they pulled me off to the side. The first time it ever got stopped. And we went over to this table. By that time, Joyce was through, and the three of them were standing over there laughing. And we were going through everything. I said, well, just take out this bracelet, and everything will be fine. Well, they had to take out everything in that purse. And finally we got through, and then we got home okay, fine. And like I say, they had Christmas dinner ready, and all of them were here. And of course, Alan, like I say, Alan met and took Joy, and they went to Junction City. And I don't know, probably Michael met us at the airport. I can't remember who come and picked us up, but anyhow, we were all here, and then things had gone pretty much like I say before. We'd met Patty and Marv at that time, and they were Moose members, and so anyhow, after I joined in the early '90s, and Joy joined about the same time, and we were guides and escorts, and I was for 15 years, and then after we moved to Springfield, why I was there, and that's what most of our life was with the Moose Lodge and places they that they wanted to do. Well, anyway, our 60th anniversary was coming up. And yeah, mother passed away at Christmas, so then it was the next October, and we had to have another party, 60th anniversary. Well, it wasn't near as well. First thing, Bonnie had passed away, so there was no one doing decorations. It was nice. We had tablecloths with white tablecloths and this thing. And at that time, we had transferred from Eugene to the Springfield Lodge. And so the women there, Nancy and I met with them, and they said, just order what you want, and we'll fix it. And so they did every bit of good catering as the professional caterers did. And when we went in to that, I haven't talked about this, have I? Okay. There was probably, I would say there was close to 150 there, because there was a lot of people. Betty and Ron came, and Judy and Frank, and the kids at this time, they were all teenagers by then, so they were much more involved than they were before. Bob came. This time he had a 60 on a poster, and these were made out of Sacagawea dollars. And Jean and Caroline came with us, and of course what we really missed was my aunt and mother. We missed her all through this, and Bonnie. So Devin Kirby, Bill's friend, he came back out there, and when Bill had asked him ahead of time if he'd perform, and he said no, that he hadn't done anything like that for 5 years, that he'd stopped altogether, and that he wouldn't do anything. Well, during the dance, why, two teacher friends of mine and whoever was at their table, they saw him and they said, we want to hear him. See if you can't talk him into it. He said, we don't remember his name, but we remember his performance. So I went over during the dance, and I said, you told Bill you wouldn't do it, but I said, there's been so many requests for you to get up and sing that I said, would you reconsider? And he said, well, I haven't even performed or done anything for at least 5 years. And I said, well, that's all right. They don't care. And I said, that whole table over there. And they were all over there and clapping like that. And he said, well, all right. So Bill said, well, okay, before intermission, well, he said, I'll stop the music. And Bill, this time, instead of getting whatever he got before, he recorded all the 40s, 50s, and this time he went as far as 60s. And he had Kenny and I write down some of our favorite songs, and anybody else that we could think of that had favorite songs. So anyway, right before intermission, why Phil said, well, Elvis had been talked to perform, so he said, now it's going to be different than when you heard him 10 years ago. But he said he will sing for us. So he had a teenage son, Aaron, and I don't know which one of them played the piano, because he didn't have his guitar or anything with him, and I don't know which one of them played the piano, but I think the first 2 songs they sang together, and then he sang a couple or 3 songs of his own. And of course, when he got through singing, everybody really, really clapped, and he said, he told his wife, he said, maybe I better start performing again. And she said, no, no, that's all over with. But anyhow, Kenny told Bill that he wanted to announce that he wanted me to come on up on the stage. So he said, Mom, he said, Dad wants you to come up here on the stage with him. And I thought, now what? He hadn't surprised me very many times in the 60 years. I pretty well knew what he was doing, but I had no idea. And I went up on the stage, so he started in that he'd had some health issues this past year, and I stayed with him lots of times at the hospital, and I don't know what all he said, a lot of stuff. But anyhow, he said, I got something that I want to give you. And that's when he gave me my diamond bracelet. It had 60 diamonds on it. And that I was surprised at. Because I think that was probably the only time that he really, really surprised me. And of course, everybody wanted to see it, all except one person. Viola never, ever asked to see my diamond bracelet, so why, I don't know. But I'm sure she saw it from a distance, and anyhow, it was. I guess probably the thing that was just different was because mother wasn't there. The teenage kids, they had a great time. The only thing that went wrong with that is Clay, Bob and Pat's son. He had his car there, and somebody had broke into his car and stole his radio out of his car. And so there was quite a bit of robbery going on around that, breaking in things. Anyway, that was kind of the end of our anniversary. And so that's it for this time.